Chapter 3. Societal Views and Norms. 3.1 Sex and Morality, Societal Standards. The intersection of sex and morality is a complex and often contentious domain, where societal standards play a crucial role in shaping individuals' behaviors and attitudes towards sexuality. Morality, when it comes to sex, is deeply influenced by a variety of factors including cultural norms, religious beliefs, legal systems, and historical contexts. These societal standards serve as an invisible framework within which individuals navigate their sexual lives. Throughout history, different societies have established distinct moral codes regarding sexuality. These codes often dictate acceptable forms of sexual expression, gender roles in sexual relationships, and the conditions under which sex is deemed appropriate. In many cultures, these moral guidelines are reinforced through religious teachings, which can imbue sex with spiritual significance, or conversely, with notions of sin and transgression. In contemporary society, the question of sexual morality is often a subject of public debate. Issues such as premarital sex, homosexuality, and the use of contraception can divide opinions and lead to polarizing discussions. These debates frequently reflect deeper values held by the society, such as the sanctity of marriage, the importance of procreation, or the autonomy of the individual in making sexual choices. The influence of moral standards on sexuality is evident in the legal frameworks of many countries. Laws concerning age of consent, adultery, and public decency are all reflective of the moral values a society holds. While legal standards aim to reflect and enforce societal norms, they also shape those norms by delineating the boundaries of acceptable behavior. Education is another arena where the interplay of sex and morality is visible. What is taught about sex in schools often mirrors the moral stance of the wider society. In some places, sex education is focused on abstinence until marriage, reflecting a moral judgment on premarital sex. In others, a more comprehensive approach is taken, which can indicate a societal value placed on informed consent and individual well-being. The media also plays a significant role in reflecting and shaping societal standards of sexual morality. Television, movies, and music often portray sexual relationships in a way that aligns with or challenges prevailing moral views. The representation of sexuality in media can influence public perception and discourse, contributing to the evolving standards of sexual morality. Societal standards of sexual morality can have a profound impact on individuals' sexual health. For example, in societies where discussing sex is taboo, individuals may lack access to important information about safe sex practices, leading to higher rates of sexually transmitted infections and unintended pregnancies. This illustrates the importance of considering the health implications of moral standards related to sex. The moral discourse around sex often intersects with issues of power and inequality. For instance, moral judgments about sex work or non-normative sexualities can perpetuate stigma and discrimination. These judgments can have real-world consequences, affecting the rights and well-being of those who are marginalized by dominant moral standards. Moreover, societal standards of sexual morality are not static, but are subject to change over time. What was once considered immoral, such as interracial marriage or same-sex relationships, may become accepted as societal attitudes evolve. This fluidity reflects the ongoing negotiation within societies about the values that underpin moral standards related to sex. Conflicts can arise when personal beliefs about sexual morality clash with societal standards. Individuals may face dilemmas when their personal desires or identities do not conform to the norms of their community. Navigating these conflicts can be a source of tension, but it can also lead to personal growth and social change. Sex and morality are deeply intertwined, with societal standards significantly influencing how sexuality is expressed and experienced. These standards are a product of a wide range of influences, from religion and law to media and education, and they have a direct impact on the health, rights, and well-being of individuals. Understanding the dynamic relationship between sex and morality is key to fostering a society in which diverse expressions of sexuality are respected, and where individuals can make informed choices about their sexual lives. 3.2 The role of religion in shaping sexual norms. Religion has historically played a significant role in shaping sexual norms and behaviors within societies. The doctrines and teachings of various faiths often provide explicit guidelines regarding sexuality, including what is considered moral and immoral sexual conduct. These religious norms are not only personal ethical guidelines, but also influence social policy and community standards. In many of the world's religions, sexual relations are framed within the context of marriage. For instance, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism often endorse the idea that sexual intercourse should be reserved for a married man and woman. This principle is intended to promote family unity, ensure the legitimacy of offspring, and in many cases is seen as a commandment from a higher power. These views can lead to strong community support for marital sex while stigmatizing sex outside of this bond. Celibacy and abstinence are also important concepts in many religions. In some branches of Christianity, such as Catholicism, clergy are often expected to remain celibate, reflecting the view that abstaining from sexual relations can lead to greater spiritual purity. Similarly, many religions promote abstinence before marriage for laypeople, suggesting that such self-restraint is virtuous and aligns with divine intentions. Religious teachings often extend to specific sexual behaviors. For example, many religions have historically condemned homosexual acts, leading to widespread stigmatization of LGBTQ+ individuals. These views are slowly evolving in some religious communities, but they still significantly impact the lives and rights of LGBTQ+ people in many parts of the world. The role of women in sexual relationships is another area deeply influenced by religion. In certain religious contexts, women's sexuality is closely guarded, with an emphasis on virtues like modesty and chastity. These standards can impact women's autonomy and freedom, influencing everything from dress codes to the ability to make independent sexual choices. Religion also plays a role in discussions about reproductive rights and sexual health. Contraceptive use, for example, is supported by some religious groups as a form of responsible family planning, while others view it as contravening natural law or divine plans for procreation. Such diverging views can lead to significant debates and policy differences regarding family planning services and sex education. The intersection of religion and sex education is a subject of ongoing debate. While some advocate for comprehensive sex education that includes information about contraception and safe sex practices, others support an abstinence-only approach that aligns with their religious values. This debate often plays out in educational policy and the types of programs implemented in public schools. Religious texts and traditions provide rich narratives that shape adherents' views on sexuality. Stories about creation, sin, and redemption can influence how individuals view the nature of sexual desire and its place in human life. These narratives can be interpreted in various ways, leading to different emphases and teachings about sexuality within a single religious tradition. Within many religious communities, there are movements aimed at reinterpreting traditional teachings to align with modern understandings of sexuality. These progressive religious scholars and leaders strive to find balance between adhering to their faith and acknowledging the rights and dignity of individuals who have historically been marginalized by mainstream religious sexual ethics. The impact of religion on sexual norms extends beyond personal beliefs and behaviors into the realm of politics and law. In many countries, religious groups are influential in shaping laws that govern sexual behavior, marriage, and family life. The intertwining of religious morality and legal standards is a complex issue that continues to provoke discussion and dissent. The role of religion in shaping sexual norms is profound and multifaceted. It encompasses a wide range of beliefs and practices that influence individuals' personal lives, as well as the broader societal attitudes towards sex. While religion can offer a sense of meaning and community for many, it can also be a source of conflict, particularly when religious norms clash with contemporary views on sexual rights and freedoms. As societies evolve, the conversation about the role of religion in sexual ethics continues to be a dynamic and important one. 3.3 Legality and Sex, Laws and Regulations. The legal landscape around sex is a complex interplay of laws and regulations that reflect a society's values and norms. These laws are designed to govern behavior, protect individuals, and in many cases enforce societal standards of morality. Sex laws can be found across the spectrum, from regulations on age of consent and prostitution to legislation concerning sexual assault and public decency. They are as much about protecting rights as they are about delineating what is deemed acceptable sexual conduct by a particular culture or society. Age of consent laws are a fundamental aspect of sexual legality. These laws establish the age at which an individual is considered legally competent to consent to sexual acts. The intention behind these laws is to protect minors from exploitation and abuse. However, the specific age can vary widely around the world, reflecting differing cultural and societal attitudes towards adolescence and sexuality. Marriage laws also regulate sexual behavior, historically establishing the legal and socially acceptable context for sexual activity. These laws can stipulate who can marry whom, at what age, and under what conditions. Changes in marriage laws, such as the legalization of same-sex marriage in many places, reflect shifting societal attitudes towards sexuality, and are often the result of long-term advocacy by human rights activists. Prostitution is another area where legality and sex intersect. In some countries, selling sex is legal and regulated as a profession, while in others it is criminalized. The legal status of prostitution is often a topic of heated debate, with arguments ranging from personal autonomy and safety to moral considerations and societal impact. These laws not only affect those who engage in sex work, but also inform public attitudes towards the sex industry. Sexual assault and harassment laws are critical in addressing and preventing sexual violence. These laws are intended to protect individuals' rights to bodily autonomy and to consent, and they serve as a deterrent against sexual violence. However, the effectiveness of these laws is often influenced by how they are enforced and the broader cultural attitudes towards victims and perpetrators. Laws regarding pornography and obscenity attempt to navigate the tension between freedom of expression and community standards of decency. What constitutes obscenity can be subjective and culturally specific, leading to differences in how such material is regulated. These laws can have a significant impact on the production and distribution of sexual media and on the rights of individuals to access such material. The regulation of contraception and family planning is also subject to legal control. In some societies, access to birth control is widely supported and legally protected, while in others, it is restricted or even prohibited. These regulations reflect deeper values around reproductive rights, gender roles, and the right to privacy. Privacy laws often come into play with sexuality, particularly in cases where individuals' sexual conduct or orientation is disclosed without their consent. Legal protections for privacy are crucial for allowing individuals to explore their sexuality without fear of exposure or discrimination. This is particularly relevant in the digital age, where personal information can be easily and often inadvertently shared. Legislation around sexual health and education is an area where legality directly affects public well-being. These laws can determine what kind of sexual health services are provided and how sex education is delivered in schools. The legal frameworks in place often reflect the degree to which a society is willing to engage openly with issues of sexual health and rights. Discrimination laws that protect against bias based on sexual orientation or gender identity are a relatively recent development in many legal systems. These laws aim to ensure equal rights and protections for all individuals, regardless of their sexuality. The enactment and enforcement of such laws are vital for the progress towards equality and the protection of LGBTQ+ individuals. The relationship between legality and sex is a reflection of the balance societies try to strike between personal freedoms and societal protections. Laws and regulations around sex are continually evolving, often lagging behind societal changes, but sometimes leading the way in redefining norms and protecting rights. Understanding this legal landscape is crucial, as it not only governs individual behavior, but also shapes the societal context in which discussions about sex and sexuality take place. 3.4 Sex education across cultures. Sex education is a critical component of adolescent development and public health that varies widely across cultural contexts. At its core, sex education aims to provide individuals with the knowledge and skills necessary to make informed decisions about their sexual health and behavior. However, the content, delivery, and scope of sex education are deeply influenced by cultural attitudes towards sex and sexuality. In many Western cultures, sex education programs are a standard part of the school curriculum. These programs often include information about human anatomy, reproductive health, contraception, and sexually transmitted infections, STIs. The approach is typically scientific and fact-based, with an increasing emphasis on issues like consent, healthy relationships, and sexual orientation. The aim is to empower young people with comprehensive knowledge to manage their sexual health and navigate relationships. Contrastingly, in more conservative or religious societies, sex education may be limited or approached differently. There may be a greater focus on abstinence until marriage, rather than a comprehensive overview of sexual health. In these cultures, the discussion of sexual matters may be considered taboo, and sex education may be delivered within the framework of moral and ethical instruction. The Scandinavian model of sex education is often cited as progressive and effective. In countries like Sweden and Denmark, sex education begins early, is comprehensive, and is integrated into a broader curriculum that includes topics like respect, equality, and emotional well-being. These programs are based on the principle that open and honest information about sex promotes respect for one's own and others' bodies and choices. In contrast, some Asian cultures approach sex education with more caution and reserve. Discussions about sex may take place later in adolescence and can be less explicit. In these cultures, there is often a strong emphasis on family values and social harmony, which can impact how sex education is perceived and conducted. In several African cultures, traditional forms of sex education prevail, where knowledge about sexuality is passed down through rituals, ceremonies, or discussions within same-gender groups. These traditional teachings can include valuable information about the social responsibilities and expectations associated with sexual behavior, though they may not always include modern understandings of sexual health. In Latin American cultures, the approach to sex education can be influenced by both the strong presence of the Catholic Church and the region's diverse indigenous traditions. This duality can create a complex environment for sex education, where progressive policies may exist alongside conservative attitudes. The content and efficacy of sex education are often a reflection of a society's willingness to confront issues like teenage pregnancy and STIs. In cultures where these issues are acknowledged as significant public health concerns, sex education tends to be more robust and direct. Access to sex education is another area where cultural disparities are evident. In some cultures, especially where girls' education is undervalued, females may receive little to no formal education about sexuality, which can have long-term consequences for their health and autonomy. The role of parents and community leaders in sex education varies across cultures. In some societies, parents take on the primary role of educating their children about sex, while in others, this responsibility is shared with schools or community organizations. The level of parental involvement can significantly influence the messages that young people receive about sex. Technology and globalization are impacting the way sex education is delivered across cultures. The Internet has become a significant source of information for young people, providing access to a wide range of perspectives on sexuality. While this can be an invaluable resource, it also presents challenges in ensuring that the information accessed is accurate age-appropriate, and culturally sensitive. Sex education across cultures reflects a wide array of approaches, influenced by historical, religious, and social factors. The diversity in sex education programs worldwide demonstrates the varying ways in which societies prepare their young people for sexual maturity. As cultures continue to evolve and intersect, the exchange of ideas about best practices in sex education is crucial for the development of programs that respect cultural values while promoting sexual health and well-being. 3.5 Media representation of sex. The representation of sex in media is a powerful force that shapes societal perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors concerning sexuality. Media, in its various forms, has the capacity to reflect and influence the norms and values of a society. From films and television shows to magazines and online content, the portrayal of sex and sexual relationships can have far-reaching implications. In film and television, sex is often depicted in ways that conform to or sometimes challenge societal norms. Mainstream media traditionally portrayed sex within the confines of heterosexual, monogamous relationships, often marginalizing or excluding non-heteronormative sexualities. However, there has been a gradual shift towards more diverse and realistic portrayals, including LGBTQ+ relationships and discussions about sexual consent and health. Advertising frequently uses sex as a tool to attract attention and sell products. This utilization of sex appeal can perpetuate certain stereotypes about gender and sexuality. Advertisements often depict idealized bodies and sexual allure, reinforcing narrow standards of beauty and desirability. These portrayals can impact individual self-esteem and expectations regarding sexual appeal and behavior. Literature, both classic and contemporary, has long explored themes of sex and sexuality, providing a medium through which societal attitudes towards sex can be examined and critiqued. From the hidden desires in classic literature to the explicit scenes in modern romance novels, literature offers a lens into the complexities of human sexuality and the ways it has been understood and experienced across different eras. The rise of the internet and digital media has dramatically changed the landscape of sex in media. With the proliferation of online pornography, sexual content is more accessible than ever before. This accessibility raises concerns about the impact of such content on sexual development and behavior, particularly among young people who may use pornography as a form of sex education. Social media platforms have become arenas where sexuality is expressed and discussed openly. These platforms can be spaces for empowerment and education, where individuals share experiences and information about sexuality. However, they can also perpetuate unrealistic expectations and expose users to unsolicited sexual content or harassment. Music videos are another medium where sex is frequently depicted. Often criticized for objectifying bodies, particularly women's bodies, music videos can influence cultural perceptions of sexuality and gender roles. The visual and auditory power of music videos gives them a significant impact, particularly on younger audiences who consume them in large numbers. Video games, an increasingly popular form of media, also contribute to the media representation of sex. While sex in video games has historically been less overt than in film or television, there is a growing trend of including sexual themes in content. This incorporation can be controversial, especially when it intersects with issues of gender representation and violence. The news media plays a role in framing discussions about sex-related topics, such as sexual health, sex crimes, and sexuality education. The ways in which these subjects are reported can influence public opinion and policy. Balanced and sensitive reporting is crucial to inform the public without reinforcing stigma or sensationalism. Children's media is a unique space where the representation of sex must be handled with particular care. While overt sexual content is generally absent from children's media, there are often subtle messages about gender roles and relationships. It is important for content creators to be mindful of the implicit messages being conveyed to young viewers, who are in the process of forming their understanding of sexuality and relationships. The representation of sex in media is multifaceted and deeply influential. It is a reflection of cultural attitudes and a formative element in shaping those attitudes. The power of media to define, question, and sometimes reinforce societal norms about sex is undeniable. As media continues to evolve, the responsibility of content creators to present sex in a manner that is respectful, inclusive, and aware of its impact on audiences remains paramount. 3.6 Sex and Gender, Expectations and Reality. The concepts of sex and gender are central to how societies structure and understand human sexuality. While sex traditionally refers to the biological differences between males and females, gender is a more complex term that encompasses the roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for men and women. This distinction is crucial in understanding the expectations placed on individuals and the reality of how they experience their sexuality. Historically, societies have generally prescribed a binary system of gender closely linked to biological sex, which has established expectations for sexual behavior. Men and women have been expected to adhere to specific gender roles, which often include expectations regarding their sexual behavior. For instance, men have often been expected to be assertive or even aggressive in their sexual desires, while women have traditionally been expected to be passive or protective of their chastity. These gendered expectations have profound effects on the sexual lives of individuals. They can influence personal identity, the formation of relationships, and the expression of sexual desires. When individuals' desires or behaviors deviate from these expectations, they may face social stigma or discrimination. For example, men who do not exhibit traditionally masculine sexual behavior may be ridiculed, and women who express overt sexual desire may be labeled with derogatory terms. The modern understanding of gender is increasingly recognized as a spectrum rather than a binary concept. This shift acknowledges that not everyone fits neatly into the categories of male or female, or conforms to the traditional expectations associated with these categories. This more nuanced understanding allows for a broader range of sexual identities and experiences, challenging the rigid constraints of traditional gender roles. In recent years, there has been an increasing recognition of the diversity of gender identities, including transgender, non-binary, and genderqueer individuals. This recognition has broadened the conversation around sex and gender, bringing attention to the unique sexual health needs and experiences of these populations. It has also highlighted the inadequacy of traditional gender expectations in capturing the complexity of human sexuality. Gender expectations can also influence the development and implementation of sexual health policies and programs. For instance, sex education that only addresses heterosexual relationships between cisgender individuals fails to provide necessary information to those who do not fit these categories. Recognizing and incorporating a broader understanding of gender into these programs is essential for them to be effective and inclusive. The impact of gender on sexual violence and exploitation is a critical issue. Societal expectations about gender can contribute to a culture in which sexual aggression is normalized or excused, and victims are blamed for their own victimization. Challenging these gendered norms is a crucial step in preventing sexual violence and supporting survivors. Gender expectations also intersect with other social categories such as race, class, and ethnicity, to create complex layers of discrimination or privilege. For example, the sexualization of women of color often occurs in different and more extreme forms than the sexualization of white women, reflecting a convergence of racial and gender stereotypes. The media plays a significant role in perpetuating or challenging gender expectations related to sex. Television, movies, and advertising often present stereotypical portrayals of male and female sexuality, which can reinforce harmful gender norms. However, media can also be a platform for the representation of diverse gender identities and sexualities, contributing to a more inclusive understanding of sex and gender. In the workplace, Gender expectations can lead to disparities in how male and female sexuality are perceived and managed. For instance, expressions of sexuality that are deemed acceptable for men may be considered unprofessional for women, affecting everything from dress codes to interpersonal dynamics. Addressing these double standards is an ongoing challenge in the pursuit of gender equality. Sex and gender are foundational to how individuals experience and express their sexuality. The expectations associated with these concepts have often been restrictive, but as society's understanding of gender evolves, so too does the reality of sexual expression and identity. Recognizing the spectrum of gender and the diversity of sexualities is crucial for creating a society that respects and supports the sexual rights and well-being of all its members. 3.7 Sex work, stigma and society. Sex work, defined as the exchange of sexual services for money or goods, has long been a subject of significant social stigma and moral debate. Throughout history, sex workers have often found themselves on the fringes of society, facing prejudice, discrimination, and criminalization. The stigma associated with sex work is complex, deeply rooted in societal attitudes about sexuality, morality, and gender roles. The societal stigma surrounding sex work is multifaceted. It often stems from the belief that sex work is inherently exploitative and contrary to societal values of love, monogamy, and family. Many cultures view sex as something that should only occur within the bounds of a personal relationship, and thus, the commodification of sex is seen as devaluing both the act itself and the individuals involved. Sex workers frequently face legal challenges, as many countries have laws that criminalize their trade. These laws can vary widely, from banning the sale of sexual services outright to prohibiting the solicitation of sex work or the operation of brothels. The criminalization of sex work does not only impact the ability of sex workers to earn a living, but also affects their safety, health, and access to justice. The stigma against sex work can lead to serious health implications for those in the industry. Criminalization and marginalization can deter sex workers from seeking necessary health care, out of fear of legal repercussions or judgment from healthcare providers. This is particularly concerning regarding sexual health and the prevention and treatment of sexually transmitted infections, STIs. Sex workers often face societal exclusion, which can have profound effects on their mental health and well-being. The constant need to hide one's occupation to avoid judgment can lead to isolation, a lack of social support, and feelings of shame. This social ostracism can compound the other risks associated with sex work, such as violence and exploitation. Activists and advocacy groups argue for the decriminalization and destigmatization of sex work, asserting that it should be recognized as a legitimate form of labor. They contend that sex workers deserve the same rights and protections as workers in other industries, including the right to organize, the right to work in safe conditions, and the right to access health services without discrimination. The portrayal of sex workers in media often reinforces societal stigma. Sex workers are frequently depicted as victims, criminals, or morally corrupt individuals, rather than as complex human beings with agency. These portrayals can influence public perception, making it more difficult to shift attitudes and policies towards a more rights-based approach to sex work. Despite the stigma, sex work remains a reality for many individuals around the world. Economic necessity, lack of alternative employment opportunities, and in some cases, personal choice, lead people to engage in sex work. Understanding the diverse reasons why individuals enter into sex work is crucial for creating policies that address their needs and respect their rights. Gender plays a significant role in the stigma of sex work. Female sex workers in particular may be judged more harshly than their male counterparts, reflecting broader societal norms that value female chastity and associate women's worth with sexual purity. Transgender and male sex workers also face stigma, often compounded by homophobia and transphobia. Efforts to reduce the stigma against sex work include educational campaigns that highlight the humanity and dignity of sex workers. These campaigns aim to shift the narrative around sex work, promoting an understanding that sex workers are entitled to the same respect and human rights as all individuals. The stigma against sex work is deeply embedded in societal attitudes about sex, morality, and gender. Overcoming this stigma requires a multifaceted approach that includes legal reform, public education, and a shift towards a more inclusive and empathetic view of sex work and those who engage in it. By addressing the stigma and societal challenges faced by sex workers, communities can move towards a more just and equitable society where the rights and health of all individuals are protected. 3.8 LGBTQ+ rights and societal acceptance. The rights and societal acceptance of LGBTQ+ individuals are issues at the forefront of contemporary discussions about sexuality. While there has been significant progress in many parts of the world, the journey toward full acceptance and equal rights for LGBTQ+ people is ongoing. This section examines the multifaceted aspects of LGBTQ+ rights and the varying degrees of societal acceptance. Historically, individuals who identified as LGBTQ+ were often forced to live their lives in secrecy. Homosexuality was criminalized in many cultures, and other forms of non-heteronormative sexual orientation and gender identity were stigmatized. This criminalization not only impacted individuals' personal lives, but also limited their ability to participate fully and openly in society. The modern LGBTQ+ rights movement began to gain momentum in the late 20th century, with activists advocating for decriminalization, anti-discrimination protections, and recognition of same-sex relationships. One of the most significant milestones in this movement was the Stonewall Riots of 1969 in New York City, which served as a catalyst for the gay rights movement in the United States and beyond. Marriage equality has been a central issue in the fight for LGBTQ+ rights. The legalization of same-sex marriage in various countries and states represents a monumental shift in the recognition of LGBTQ+ relationships. These legal changes reflect broader changes in societal attitudes towards LGBTQ+ individuals and their right to the same legal benefits and social recognition afforded to heterosexual couples. Despite legal advancements, societal acceptance of LGBTQ+ individuals varies greatly across different cultures and communities. In some places, LGBTQ+ people are celebrated and included, while in others, they continue to face discrimination and violence. Acceptance is often a reflection of cultural, religious, and political attitudes towards gender and sexuality. Visibility in media and popular culture has played a significant role in promoting societal acceptance. The representation of LGBTQ+ characters and stories can normalize diverse expressions of sexuality and gender identity, fostering empathy and understanding among the broader population. Educational systems are also a battleground for LGBTQ+ acceptance. Incorporating LGBTQ+ history and issues into school curricula can be a powerful tool for combating ignorance and prejudice. However, it often faces opposition from those who believe it conflicts with traditional values or who argue that it falls outside the scope of education. Transgender and gender non-conforming individuals face unique challenges in the quest for rights and acceptance. Issues such as access to gender-affirming healthcare, the ability to change legal documents to reflect one's gender identity, and protection from discrimination are critical to the well-being and equality of transgender people. The intersection of LGBTQ+ rights with other social justice movements has broadened the scope of advocacy. Issues such as racial justice, economic inequality, and immigration rights are intertwined with LGBTQ+ rights, reflecting the diverse experiences of LGBTQ+ individuals and the need for a holistic approach to advocacy. The role of allies in promoting LGBTQ+ rights and acceptance is significant. Allies can use their privilege to advocate for change, support LGBTQ+ individuals and communities, and challenge homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia in their own environments. The journey towards full LGBTQ+ rights and societal acceptance is complex and ongoing. Legal progress and increased visibility have led to significant gains, but there remains a need for continued advocacy and education to address persistent discrimination and inequality. The future of LGBTQ+ rights is intertwined with the broader movement towards a society where all individuals are valued and can live authentically, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. 3.9 Sex and Age, Youth and the Elderly. The relationship between sex and age encompasses a broad spectrum of attitudes, practices, and challenges that vary throughout an individual's lifespan. Societal norms often dictate different expectations and standards for sexual behavior at various ages, from the onset of puberty to the later years of life. Understanding how sexuality is perceived and experienced at different stages is essential for addressing the specific needs and concerns that arise with age. In youth, the onset of puberty marks a significant transition not only biologically but also socially and emotionally. This period involves the development of sexual characteristics and the awakening of sexual feelings. Societies often grapple with how to guide youth through this phase, balancing the need for education and safe exploration with the protection of young people from exploitation and harm. Sex education for youth is a subject of considerable debate. Effective sex education should equip young people with accurate information about their bodies, consent, relationships, and contraception. However, approaches to sex education vary widely, with some programs focusing on abstinence and others advocating for comprehensive knowledge, reflecting differing societal views on youth sexuality. The sexualization of young people, particularly girls, in media and popular culture, is a pervasive issue. It can create unrealistic expectations about bodies and behavior, and contribute to self-esteem and body image issues. Societal pressure to conform to idealized standards of beauty and sexuality can have long-lasting effects on young individuals' perceptions of sex and relationships. Conversely, the sexuality of the elderly is often overlooked or dismissed, leading to a different set of societal challenges. Older adults continue to have sexual desires and the capacity for sexual pleasure, yet these aspects of their lives are frequently ignored or treated with discomfort. The stigma surrounding elderly sexuality can lead to a lack of support and resources for this demographic. Ageism or discrimination based on age can profoundly affect the sexual lives of the elderly. Stereotypes that portray older individuals as asexual or as inappropriate for engaging in sexual activity contribute to the marginalization of their sexual needs. These stereotypes can also have implications for the availability and quality of sexual health care for older adults. The elderly face unique health challenges that can impact their sexual lives, such as menopause in women and erectile dysfunction in men. These biological changes, while natural, can affect self-esteem, sexual identity, and the dynamics of sexual relationships. Access to appropriate medical care and information can help older adults navigate these changes. Romantic and sexual relationships in later life often provide companionship, emotional support, and pleasure. However, societal attitudes can sometimes discourage or invalidate these relationships, particularly when they involve new partnerships or non-traditional arrangements, such as dating after the loss of a spouse. Sexually transmitted infections, STIs, are a concern for individuals of all ages, including the elderly. There is a misconception that older adults do not need education about STIs, which can lead to increased vulnerability. Awareness campaigns and health services need to address the sexual health needs of the elderly more effectively. The legal and ethical considerations surrounding sex and age are also significant. Issues such as consent in the context of cognitive decline, such as Alzheimer's disease, raise complex questions about autonomy and protection. Legal frameworks must balance respect for the sexual rights of the elderly with the need to safeguard those who may be vulnerable to abuse or exploitation. The relationship between sex and age is multifaceted, reflecting broader societal attitudes towards sexuality throughout the human lifespan. Young people require education and guidance to explore their sexuality safely and responsibly, while the elderly deserve recognition and respect for their ongoing sexual needs and capabilities. A society that embraces a healthy and open approach to sexuality at all ages is one that acknowledges the intrinsic value of sexual well-being as a lifelong aspect of human health and happiness. 3.10 The future of societal views on sex. The future of societal views on sex, while unpredictable, is likely to continue evolving as it has throughout human history. Advances in technology, shifts in social dynamics, and changes in legal frameworks all contribute to how societies perceive and manage sexuality. This section explores potential trends and developments that could shape future societal views on sex. One emerging trend is the increasing normalization and visibility of diverse sexual identities and orientations. As LGBTQ+ rights gain wider recognition globally, acceptance of non-heteronormative sexualities is likely to grow. This increased visibility could encourage more nuanced and varied representations of sexuality in media, education, and public discourse. Technological advancements, particularly in digital communication and virtual reality, are poised to further transform societal views on sex. The proliferation of information and connectivity allows for more expansive sexual exploration and the possibility of virtual sexual experiences. These technologies could challenge traditional views on physical intimacy and the nature of sexual relationships. The future may see a greater emphasis on sexual health and well-being as integral components of overall health. This could lead to more comprehensive sex education programs that address a range of topics from consent and communication to pleasure and diversity. Societies might prioritize sexual health services, making them more accessible and acceptable to use. Changing demographic patterns, such as aging populations and the dynamics of urbanization, will likely influence societal views on sex. As people live longer and healthier lives, the sexuality of older adults may become a more prominent topic, challenging ageist perceptions and acknowledging the importance of sex in later life. The role of feminism and other social justice movements in shaping future societal views on sex cannot be understated. These movements may continue to challenge gender norms and power imbalances in sexual relationships, advocating for equality, respect, and autonomy across the spectrum of sexual experiences. Legislation regarding sex and sexuality is expected to evolve as well. Laws around sex work, for example, could shift toward decriminalization and regulation, changing societal perceptions and improving conditions for sex workers. Legal recognition of diverse family structures and reproductive rights will also continue to be areas of change and discussion. Sexual ethics and morality will likely continue to be topics of debate. With the influence of various cultural and religious beliefs, societies will grapple with ethical questions surrounding sex, including the impact of technology, the definition of consent, and the commercialization of sex. Environmental concerns and the sustainability movement may also shape future societal views on sex, influencing reproductive choices and family planning. Societies may need to balance individual desires for children with concerns about overpopulation, resource allocation, and ecological impact. Youth activism and advocacy could become a driving force in shaping future societal views on sex. Younger generations, often more progressive in their attitudes toward sexuality, may push for changes in how sex is discussed, taught, and understood. This generational shift could lead to more open and inclusive societal norms around sex. Societal views on sex are bound to continue evolving in response to various cultural, technological, and political shifts. While the direction of this evolution is uncertain, it is likely to be characterized by increased diversity and inclusivity in the understanding and expression of human sexuality. The future societal views on sex will reflect a complex interplay of past traditions, current trends, and innovative ideas, shaping how individuals experience and express their sexuality in the context of an ever-changing world.